WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange has been denied internet access since Monday and isn't being allowed visitors at the Ecuadorian embassy in London, where he's been staying for almost 6 years. Now, sources close to the whistleblower group have told RT why the Ecuadorian officials took those decisions, as Anastasia Cherkina reports.
According to sources close to WikiLeaks, we have learned that the Ecuadorian government had placed electronic jammers inside the Ecuadorian embassy right behind me, where Julian Assange has been holed up for over 5.5 years now. And the idea of this was to block him from being able to tweet, as well as communicate with the outside world, hold telephone conversations, or have access to the internet, generally speaking. We also understand that he's been banned from having visitors inside the embassy, and apparently all of this comes following a publication in the Ecuadorian press about Julian Assange's tweets concerning the Catalan issue, specifically the detention of Catalan independence leader Carles Puigdemont in Germany earlier this week. And our understanding, according to this source close to WikiLeaks, is that Julian Assange and his team have been informed of having to delete a certain tweet that he had posted, among others, concerning the Catalan issue.
In 1940, the elected president of Catalonia, Luis Companys, was captured by the Gestapo at the request of Spain, delivered to them and executed. Today, German police have arrested the elected president of Catalonia, Carles Puigdemont, at the request of Spain, to be extradited.
Well, Assange took refuge inside the embassy in 2012 after being accused of rape in Sweden, which was later dropped by Stockholm's authorities. The whistleblower fears leaving the embassy and being extradited to the US, where he faces charges of espionage. Well, to discuss this, I'm now joined by journalist and documentary filmmaker John Pilger. John, thank you very much indeed for joining us. The Ecuadorians say Assange violated an agreement he was made to sign, saying he shouldn't comment on foreign affairs, while his side denied that this happened. So what do you think is the real reason for these punishments?
I don't know about an agreement. What I do know is this, in fact, and you have to step back, this is about a war on freedom of speech. This man is being denied the most basic right, freedom of speech. It's part of a wider war. The wider war is against known enemies, and Russia is one of them, China is another. But at the moment, it's at a propaganda stage. And preventing Julian Assange, whose organization, WikiLeaks, has done so much to expose the true nature of this war, the rapacious side to this war, and the dangers that it presents, silencing him, taking away this basic freedom of speech is part of that. It's part of the propaganda war that the attack in Salisbury represents. Here we have all Russian diplomats being expelled all over the world on the basis of no evidence, And when Julian Assange tweeted recently, he wasn't saying that the Russians might not necessarily be innocent of this. He was just suggesting that there was no evidence. But that's what this propaganda war is about. It is a war on speaking out. It is a war on dissent. It is a war on the very things that I'm saying at the moment. It's a war on journalism and requires collaborators. Collaborators like in The Guardian, this despicable journalist James Ball, who wrote today, and other collaborators. These are not journalists, because this is about the public's right to know, and it's the public's right to know what their governments are doing. The second part of this war is about a real war. You forget the whole idea of trade war. We've got the prospect of a real war unless this propaganda war is seen through. That's why this attack on Julian Assange's freedom of speech, the attack on him and WikiLeaks over the years is so important, because it does what journalism should be doing, and that is holding great power to account.
Do you think in this particular instance, though, there's something in the timing here being significant, given the fact that the British Minister, Alan Duncan, if you recently heard him say that Assange was a miserable little worm in Parliament, do you think there's something significant about the timing right now?
What is the point of speaking? This is just an abusive, rather low-life politician who stands up in Parliament and says what he can say. Julian can't answer back. He's prevented from answering back. Well, actually, he has answered back already. But that's irrelevant. You're absolutely right in terms of its timing. It's timing to do with this propaganda episode in Salisbury, and that's what it has been, because something in which has produced no evidence and yet has brought us so close to a provocative stage of war with the world's second biggest arsenal, country with an arsenal of nuclear powers, is something that we really have to seriously consider. That they're all knitted together. Not any great conspiracy as such, but they're all part of the same thing. A propaganda war will lead to a shooting war, and this attack on free speech, this attack on Assange, is integral to that.
Do you think then that Ecuador is feeling the pressure, finally feeling the pressure? I mean, he's been there for 6 years now, from other countries.
Yes, of course it is. It's a tiny country. It's a tiny country in Latin America. And most countries in Latin America, not all that long ago, were vassal states of the United States. The US could do what it wanted with them. And it was the previous president who stood up to them. This government appears not to be able to stand up to them, is buckling to pressure. But of course it is. It is the great bully against a small country in Latin America.
Well, the Ecuadorian embassy has since warned of possible further measures against Assange. I mean, what could these entail?
What can they do? They know that it's just cruelty now. The United Nations Working Party on Unlawful Detention, that is the highest panel in the world, has said that Julian Assange is detained unlawfully and that he should be set free, and that his human rights, his basic human rights, are contravened day after day. So what can the Ecuadorian government do? What can it do to make it even more cruel for him? The fact that this man has withstood the pressure he has is extraordinary, absolutely extraordinary. Doing the job that journalists should be doing, but instead have become collaborators in this truly disgraceful mutation of what real news gathering should be. People should be answering back. You know, this began in 2008, really, when there was a secret Pentagon report which said that their aim was to destroy the trust in WikiLeaks. And that's what they've set out to do, to destroy Assange. Because, and they made it quite clear, this was their mission, as they put it. Their mission to do that was in order to destroy true journalism. A few years later, we had a Ministry of Defence report in the UK, which WikiLeaks leaked, which said that there were 3 threats to the establishment, so-called establishment in the UK, US, and elsewhere in the West. Russian spies was 1, terrorists was 2, but top of the list was investigative journalists. And until journalists wake up that this is their moment, until they speak up and start behaving like journalists and giving the public the information that people have a right to know, then we are headed for war. I've been a journalist for many years. I've been distinguished as a journalist. I've never been more certain of something. I've never known a situation, a world so precarious as the one we're in at the moment.
And finally then, John, what do you think, which legal options would you say are still open to Julian Assange to possibly leave the embassy a free man?
Well, the legal option, the British government is breaking the law. They participated in a 16-month-long investigation by the United Nations. which came out with its report. They went along with it. They didn't like the result, so they didn't comply with it. It's like walking out of a court. You don't like the verdict, and you can't often do that. That's what they've done. The law is very clear. Assange has long been vindicated. The Swedish case was bogus. It collapsed. The political case against him has been answered many times over. And the international case is something that is there for all to see and to understand if they want to. And that is that the United Nations has called on the British government to abide by international law and give Assange, a political refugee, free passage out of the embassy. It hasn't. That's what it should do.
It depends on whether that's going to happen, doesn't it? John Pilger, journalist and documentary filmmaker, thank you very much indeed for your thoughts. Thank you.
Huma special, Podesta emails. This just in. Moments ago, after teasing its Twitter followers to stay tuned for our FBI DOJ #Podesta email special circa 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, WikiLeaks released what appears to be part 28 of its Podesta dump, dubbed the DOJ FBI Huma Special, and includes some 1,308 emails, bringing the total to 45,526 in total emails released. We assume the batch will be heavily focused on the DOJ, FBI, and Huma, and will present readers with any relevant emails as we find them. In an email from June 10, 2011, from now Campaign Communication Manager Gene Palermi to John Podesta and Nara Tandon, Palermi writes, regarding Huma, following the first Anthony Weiner scandal, that is, time to get in the hazmat suits, bust in that house, and get Huma the hell out of there. Tannen responds, Lord have mercy. We assume this was a reference to one of the early Anthony Weiner scandals and a hairbringer of things to come regarding Huma's husband. In retrospect, they should have followed their rhetorical advice. On August 27, 2015, an email from Lanny Davis, special counsel to President Bill Clinton and spokesperson for the president and the White House on matters concerning campaign finance investigations and other legal issues, appears to suggest that both Fox News and Megyn Kelly were part of the campaign's coordination with journalists. Davis tells Jen Palermi the following personal thoughts, which suggested getting a guarantee from Megyn Kelly that she won't be tough on Hillary in a proposed interview, which could be a ratings and media bonanza meant to explain why Hillary wiped her server. This is directly from the emails. Dear Jen, I know that I'm about to propose a very risky and will be instinctively viewed negatively on the first reaction, but because of the high advantages that I see, perfectly aware of the risks, I think this proposal should be considered. I propose that the secretary be on the Megyn Kelly File show for at least 30 minutes. I believe I can reduce the risks since I know Megyn and Roger Ailes very well by ensuring that the secretary will have an opportunity to answer tough questions on emails and other issues without interruption. In fact, I still believe the issue of wiping out the private server still needs to be dealt with. Simply stating that was done primarily to protect personal privacy on personal emails, but she made the mistake of mixing personal with official on the server because she was using a single device, and she should have been more transparent shortly after she left office. The interview has the potential to be a ratings and media bonanza. I have confidence she would hit a political home run and have a massive audience to deliver her message without a filter. This is pertaining to Hillary Clinton. Of course, there is a risk that Megyn will try to show how tough she can be, even tougher than on Trump. I am assuming the worst case on that risk. But if we have a guarantee, which I believe we will get, that she will have an uninterrupted chance to respond to every question and have time to prepare. I think this could be a major plus and even a game changer in the various negative narratives about the Secretary of State being largely inaccessible and sometimes testy with the media. It would be so much better to be able to talk to you on the phone about this and discuss the pros and cons, if you are willing and available. What would be the best time and the best telephone number? With warmest regards, and thanks always for your consideration of my ideas, Lanny. And he follows up 4 days later with the following. Would love a chance to talk on the phone. A few additional background points. Conversation I had with Roger Ailes and Megan some time ago on the subject of HRC pre-announcement. I think we can all see with this email that they have been doing this for a long time, and it's always a setup with the Democratic Party.
Welcome back to this special edition of Hannity. President Trump versus the oblivious left. She's back, and despite being urged to get out of the public spotlight by politicians and pundits on both sides of the aisle, oblivious Hillary Clinton just won't go away. After facing heavy criticism for her demeaning remarks about Trump voters while in Asia, the twice-failed presidential candidate is once again lashing out. During a paid speech at Rutgers University, Clinton complained that the recent criticism lodged against her is because she's a woman. Take a look.
People saying, get off the public stage and shut up, which is something we're hearing all the time. Yeah. How do you...
Well, that began to happen after the election. Yeah. And, the election was pretty traumatic. I was really struck by how people said that to me, mostly people in the press, for whatever reason, like, oh, go away, go away. And I had one of the young people who works for me go back and do a bit of research. They never said that to any man who was not elected. But I do worry that what's happened to the Republican Party is that it's being held captive by a very small group of powerful forces. We have seen the power of the NRA, for example.
While Hillary Clinton continues to bash Republicans and play the gender card, her speaking fees are taking a hit. According to reports, the $25,000 Hillary Clinton received for the speech you just saw was actually $7,000 less than Rutgers paid Jersey Shore reality TV star Snooki. So, joining us now with a reaction is RNC Chairwoman Ronna McDaniel. Ronna, I just want to say one thing. Hillary Clinton just said in that sound, she said that the press kept telling her to go away. Now, what I find shocking is they told her anything, given that she roped them off. Do you remember that during the campaign? She had them all roped off so she wouldn't have to talk to them. What's your take on Hillary and what she's doing in the public square?
Well, where do we start? I mean, she's so willing to play the sexist card when in reality, she is being treated exactly like any other nominee who would have continued to denigrate half of the country, who would continue to fail to acknowledge the failings of their campaign. And the other thing she doesn't acknowledge is what President Trump provided for the American people, which was a vision of more jobs and higher wages. And so by continually refusing to acknowledge the failings of her campaign and why she lost, she is hurting her party, and her party is saying, please go away, you are hurting us. No other previous nominee has put their foot in their mouths as much as Hillary Clinton has since this election ended.
And you know, what's interesting is we never thought that Clinton machine would ever be confronted by someone as daring as some of these politicians to say, maybe it's time for you to go away, or as I say, to go back into the woods. But Ronna, the talk about the midterms in a presidential election, first term, I should say, it usually benefits the other party. But now, with Hillary Clinton and this lunacy, her saying that the election was traumatic, doesn't this benefit Republicans?
It does, and I do think the people who aren't telling her to go away are the Democrat leadership. We haven't heard from Chuck Schumer or Nancy Pelosi, and what she said was truly insulting. To say that women only voted for President Trump because our husbands told us to, that is so denigrating. To say that we are against African Americans having jobs and progressing in our economy, that is so insulting. And so what she has said should be denounced by Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi and these red state Democrats that we're not hearing from. Joe Donnelly, Debbie Stabenow in my state, Tammy Baldwin, Bill Nelson. Where are you? So it's interesting that the Democrat leadership is not distancing themselves as vocally as they should be from the very, very insulting comments of Hillary Clinton. And it is going to help us in these midterms because President Trump not only put forward a vision in this election, he is delivering. With people getting bigger paychecks and more jobs coming back, people are feeling so good about their lives. They have more money to spend on their families. This is something that they're going to take to the polls in November and say, I need to return Republicans to office because they are delivering for me and my family.
Well, and you know what? It's not just returning Republicans to office, but those Republicans who are like-minded, like President Trump. You know, I think that going forward, it's only going to benefit candidates to at least talk the way President Trump does.
Yeah, of course. I mean, look at what President Trump has done in this year. ISIS